In this video, we'll be filling in the 2024 electoral map based on the best case scenario for Donald Trump. The former president is already the favorite according to Polymarket's 2024 election forecast. He has a 50% chance at winning compared to Harris's 47 and leads in nearly every single swing state. However, today we're going to see what the map would look like if everything continues to go well for the former president, if he does well in this upcoming September debate and the other one scheduled for October, and if momentum for Kamala Harris continues to die. We're going to begin by filling in the solid states for both candidates, beginning with the safe Harris states. These are states that will vote for her by 15 percentage points or more. And so this is going to be a realistic map, barring any extraordinary circumstances. This is what I believe the best case scenario for Donald Trump to be. I'm going to start off with California. It's going to go to Kamala Harris. This is her home state, and it's also one of the most liberal states in the country. We also have Hawaii, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine. This will give her just 97 electoral votes. While for Trump, he's easily going to win all the solid states he's won in both 2016 and 2020. We have Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except the 2nd District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Alaska, South Carolina, and the 2nd District of Maine. We don't have Iowa or Ohio. These two states are probably going to go to Trump by a double-digit margin, maybe even 13 to 15 points. But crossing that solid threshold is going to be difficult, considering that Trump only won this state as a Republican in 2016. Before it was quite competitive. And so with these solid states filled in for both candidates, Trump leads 126 to Harris's 97. Moving on now to the likely states. These states are characterized by margins between 7 to 15%. They're going to be slightly more competitive than the safe states, but one candidate still has a clear advantage. And so starting off with the likely blue states, we have many states that used to be solid for Democrats as they were for Joe Biden in 2020. Washington and Oregon are two good examples of this. Biden won them by 15-point margins, but Kamala Harris is just going to do slightly worse. So Washington and Oregon both will be in the likely Harris category. We also have Colorado, which is a state Biden did not win by a solid margin, although he did do quite well, winning it by 14 points when Hillary Clinton only defeated Trump there by less than 5 just 4 years prior. And today, Colorado is probably going to go to Harris by 7 to 9 points in a best case scenario for the former president. We also have Illinois. This is a state Democrats have won by 17 points in all 3 of the last presidential elections. It was by 16.9 in 2012, by 17.1 in 2016, and by 17.0 in 2020. The margin there is just going to fall ever so slightly for Harris if things continue to go well for Trump. We also have the Empire State of New York. Democrats simply aren't in a good spot there. We, of course, had the recent resignation of Andrew Cuomo as governor for sexual harassment. Kathy Hochul, the new governor, isn't popular, and nor is Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City. And so Kamala Harris is on track to become the first Democrat to win New York by a non-solid margin since Michael Dukakis in 1988. We also have New Jersey. Senator Bob Menendez has done a lot of damage to the Democratic Party there. He's been convicted multiple times of bribery as a sitting senator. He finally resigned just a few weeks ago. And we have Joe Biden's home state of Delaware, 3 electoral votes. The state simply isn't as liberal on a fundamental level, and so if things continue to go well for Trump, the state is going to be closer than it was in 2020. Before we continue, only 16% of you guys are actually subscribed, so please take the time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. And follow me on Twitter for daily political updates. Link in the description below. As for Trump, we're going to begin with Iowa and Ohio. I think he can win them by double-digit margins, no doubt about it. He can probably win them by 13 to 15 points, but this is going to be a realistic prediction. Obviously, Trump could win 538 electoral votes if he somehow won every single state, or he could win 400, but realistically speaking, that is unlikely to happen happen. So this is a best case scenario for Trump, but it's going to be very much grounded in reality. And so Iowa and Ohio, he can probably win by just under 15 points. I mean, remember, just 12 years ago, these were Obama states. In fact, Ohio voted with a presidential election winner for every single election for 60 years before that streak was broken in 2020 when Trump won the Buckeye State but lost the election as a whole. And so in 2016, Trump flipped both of the states and won them by pretty significant margins, much larger than the margins Obama won them by 4 years prior. And today, they're very much Republican states. The two Republican governors here, Kim Reynolds in Iowa and Mike DeWine in Ohio, won their re-elections by solid 20-point margins in 2022. On the presidential level, it's going to be closer, but there's no doubt Trump will win these two lower Midwestern states. We also have Florida, which, like Ohio, used to be a major battleground. It was very much in the middle. In fact, it was the closest election in 2012, the election in Florida, 0.88% separated Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. It was decided by a 1-point margin in 2016. But in 2020, Joe Biden did worse than Hillary Clinton here. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Everybody believed that Biden was going to win Florida. In fact, it was seen as being more leftward than North Carolina and Georgia. But in the end, Trump won Florida, and he improved off of his 2016 margin. Ron DeSantis then went on to win re-election as governor by a 20-point margin in 2022, and there's no doubt Florida is now a conservative state. It is going to go to Trump. It's obviously going to be closer on the presidential level, but in a best-case scenario, he can definitely win by at least 7 points. And the final likely Trump state on this map is Texas. The Lone Star State is probably not going to be safe for Trump in this election. The last time Republicans won Texas by a 15-point margin was Mitt Romney back in 2012. The state generally has been shifting to the left, but it's going to take Democrats a long time to actually win this state in a presidential election. There are just so many voters they have to flip, and they're really not doing that right now. Donald Trump is doing much better in Texas than he was in 2020 when he won by 5 points. And even at this point 4 years ago, people thought Joe Biden could actually win Texas, as he was only behind in the polling by 1% on the day of the election. In the end, he lost it by a much larger margin, and in a best-case scenario for Trump this November, there's no doubt Texas will be likely Republican once again. And so with the likely and solid states filled in for both candidates, Trump leads with 219 electoral votes, while Harris is just at 191. We're now going to fill in the lean states, which will be decided by 2 to 7 point margins. These states will be very close, but one candidate still has a very marginal edge, but it realistically could go both ways. And so starting off with the two lean Harris states, we have first off New Mexico, 5 electoral votes. Harris is the favorite here, even in a best case scenario for Trump. Biden won the state by 11 points in 2020. Kamala Harris can probably win it by around 4 to 5 points if her campaign continues to go off the rails. And we also have the state of Maine. It's at large vote worth 2 electoral votes. This vote went to Biden by 9% in the last election, but it does not mean that it cannot get competitive. In 2016, Hillary Clinton came within 3 points of losing the state entirely, a state that hasn't voted Republican since 1988. Maine is generally a pretty Democratic state, and so the fact that it got that close in 2016 does show signs that Donald Trump does have a chance here. And so moving on now to the lean Trump states, we have quite a long list. We're going to begin with the Sunbelt states, North Carolina and Georgia first. Looking at these two states, North Carolina is one that has never voted for a Democrat since 2008. That was the only time Democrats ever won the Tar Heel state, going all the way back to 1976, Obama winning by 1/3 of a percentage point. This was the second closest state in the entire country, behind only Missouri. And so Kamala Harris really is not going to be the next Democrat to win such a conservative state. On a fundamental level, North Carolina is still a red state like it's been over the past century. Yes, Democrats are making inroads there. Yes, they do currently hold the governorship, but on the Senate level and on the federal level, it is still a right-leaning state. Donald Trump showed this when he won it by 1.3% in 2020, when the polling average throughout the entirety of the 2020 election cycle showed that Biden was going to win. He still ended up losing. And right now, Kamala Harris isn't even leading in the polls in North Carolina, so Trump is the clear favorite there. He's probably going to be able to win by somewhere around 3 to 5 5 points in a best case scenario, maybe even 6, 7. We also have Georgia, which is a state that Trump actually lost in the last election. Joe Biden became the first Democrat to win the Peach State since 1992. However, considering his tiny margin of victory, it's not going to take too much for Trump to win it back. And in a best case scenario for the former president, there's no doubt he is going to win Georgia for a second time. He actually won it by over 5 points in 2016. So on a fundamental level, Georgia, just like North Carolina, is still a Republican state. And so we can expect Trump to win both of these southeastern states if his campaign continues to go well. Moving out west to Nevada and Arizona, we have two states that went to Biden in the last election, but Arizona, just like Georgia, was very close. Trump really doesn't need to do all that much in order to win, but if his campaign continues to go the way that it has, which is on the way up, he is definitely going to be able to take the state back and win it by around 3 to 5 points. He won Arizona by nearly 4% in 2016. Now, Nevada is a state that's gone to Clinton and Biden in the last two elections. It hasn't voted Republican since 2004, but Trump very well could win this state when he's never won before. 6 electoral votes, it's not going to be enough to get him over 270, but it would signal a pretty big shift to the right from what we saw in 2020. Trump leads in the polling, and according to the betting markets, he is the favorite. And so typically when we finish off the map, we're left with states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. But in a best case scenario for Trump, these states are going to be filled in before states like Minnesota and Virginia. I'm going to begin with Michigan, which is going to be the most liberal out of these three states, as it typically is. If Michigan goes, its two neighbors are going to go as well. Wisconsin, it might be neighboring Minnesota, which is Governor Tim Walz's home state. Walz was chosen to be Harris's running mate. He is going to receive some sort of boost there. However, looking at the Midwest as a whole, it's going to vote pretty similar to each other. Just look at 2016. All three of those states went to Trump by narrow margins, and then Biden won them by narrow margins in 2020. If one of them goes, realistically, the others are likely to do so as well. Joe Biden was born in Pennsylvania. He had an advantage there, but with him off the ticket, Kamala Harris doesn't really have any connections to the Keystone State, and unfortunately for her, Pennsylvania is the most important state in the entire country. If she had gone with Josh Shapiro, she would probably be in a better position on the map. And so we're now going to finish off the map with just the tilt states. And so I'm going to get the 2nd district out of the way. It's one electoral vote. It's going to go to Trump. And these tilt states will be decided by margins less than 2%. I'm going to begin up in New Hampshire, where Donald Trump is the slight favorite. This is a state that he can win. He lost it by less than half a percentage point in 2016. That was how close he came. Yes, Joe Biden won the state by 7 points in 2020, but just 8 years ago, Trump came so close to winning, and he can probably get over the finish line here in a best case scenario. We also have Virginia. Its 13 electoral votes would probably have gone to Trump pretty easily if Joe Biden hadn't dropped out of the election. It would have been a huge blow to the Democrats, as Virginia hasn't voted red since 2004, and Donald Trump actually took the lead in the polling average right before Biden dropped out. And currently, Harris leads by just 3% in the state, which is within the margin of error. Virginia is a competitive state, and Trump can definitely win it if things continue to go well. And the final state on the map, Minnesota, it's the only state that didn't go to Ronald Reagan in 1984. It hasn't gone red since 1972. And Kamala Harris, because she chose Tim Walz to be her running mate, I'm going to give her Walz's home state of Minnesota. He is the popular incoming governor of the state. And so, again, if Joe Biden had stayed in the race, Trump probably would have been able to win Minnesota just like Virginia. But Kamala Harris did avoid disaster by choosing the governor to be her vice president. And so that will be enough for her to have a very slight lead in the state, even if her campaign continues to go down. And so in a best case scenario for Donald Trump, he would be able to win 330 electoral votes, flipping back Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and the 2nd District of Maine, states he won in 2016, but also being able to win Nevada, Virginia, and New Hampshire, states he's never won before. And this would be by far the worst Democratic performance for any Democratic nominee since Michael Dukakis in 1988. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election, and join my Discord server. Link in the description below.